Now let's bring in Doug Bandow. He is a senior fellow at the Cato Institute and a former special assistant to US President Ronald Reagan. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. Now, it's seemingly all roads are leading to the G7. It's the US, Iran that's been talked about there. It's also been Europe, Russia, America and Ukraine. I want to start with Ukraine first. It's clear that Vladimir Zelensky thinks he's got some pressure on the battlefield, and he wants to translate that into talks with the Americans on Kyiv's side. How realistic is that?
Well, I think it's a possibility, but I wouldn't expect too much. That is, President Trump, thought he could solve that issue very quickly. That faltered. He moved on to other things. Nevertheless, he would like to be able to burnish his credentials as a peacemaker. The problem is he has what he believes to be a pretty good relationship with Vladimir Putin, so he's not likely to put a lot of pressure on Russia, but he certainly might come out a bit more on Ukraine's side now that it appears Ukraine is doing better on the battlefield.
And where's Europe's place in all of this? Can Europe go on its own and negotiate a peace on behalf of Ukraine, or with Russia, or do you need America?
Well, it certainly helps Europe to have the United States on its side. Nevertheless, the U.S. has not done much in terms of arming Ukraine over the last year. Europe has stepped into that. Europe has provided financial aid and loans. So Ukraine has been doing well when it's primarily supported by Europe, so it can continue. Nevertheless, the Europe plus the United States is much more imposing when it comes to Russia than Europe alone.
Doug, let's talk about the US-Iran Memorandum of Understanding. I've heard this theory, I want to put it to you, that the first 14 days post the signing of the 60-day ceasefire are going to be crucial, because that's where you build trust. So the question I want to ask you is, what would you be looking out for that suggests there is trust being built? And what are the pitfalls, do you think, in the first 14 days?
Well, what would be useful is to have negotiations that occur directly between Washington and Tehran. Until now, these negotiations have been mediated primarily by the Pakistanis. Mediation should continue. Nevertheless, it really is important to get Americans and Iranians together to have direct talks. If we see that moving forward, I think that's a very positive step. The danger that we face is both sides are trying to present themselves as winners. There's not any trust between them. The United States and Israel killed off a lot of the Iranian leadership. They're going to be very suspicious. The last two negotiations, the U.S. launched a war in the middle of negotiations. So there is a lot of distrust to overcome. On top of that, Israel is not happy to have these negotiations go forward. It doesn't like what it thinks the deal might be. So it has an incentive to be disruptive. So there's a lot on the line. This is not going to be easy.
Let's talk about Israel, because Donald Trump seems to have been more critical of Israel publicly than perhaps any other modern president. How do you see that?
Well, it's quite a change, obviously, from what he said before. Nevertheless, I would suspect that the president views Benjamin Netanyahu as having sold him a really bad war. That apparently President Trump went into this believing that the decapitation of the regime would cause Tehran to fold very quickly. He didn't think he had to worry about the Strait of Hormuz closing. He didn't have to worry about attacks on American allies. And instead he found he was involved in a war for more than 3 months. The international economy was in trouble. His other allies in the region were upset. I bet he blames Netanyahu for that. So that probably helps, move him to be critical, that his view is he was fooled once, he doesn't plan on being fooled again. So it'll be very interesting to see how they go forward together.
Doug Bandow, thank you so much for your thoughts. Fascinating.
Happy to do so.